We're live. All right. Next question is, what is the process when is attached to the verb cook to form the word cooker? So that is derivation. The verb cook changes to the noun cooker. Now the next has two assertions. First, in a compound verb construction, the vector verbs are semantically empty. So there are two parts. Uh, first is the main polar verb, and the second is the vector verb. The first is also known as the lexicalized verb. The second is the grammaticalized verb or the delexicalized verb. The reason being, the first part of the compound verb is actually the meaning of the verb as a whole.
Compound verb construction is where the main meaning of the action is conveyed. This main verb, also called the lexical verb.
So, the main verb or the polar verb, it contributes to the meaning of the verb, whereas the vector verb does not give the meaning but is the grammaticalized verb. So, okay, so that's about it. Now, in compound verb construction, vector verbs are semantically empty is true because the vector verb is certainly empty semantically. Second assertion that incorporation in the finite verb of a sentence strengthens the pro-drop parameter. So, if we incorporate in the finite verb of a sentence, this strengthens the pro-drop parameter. So you can understand why, because if we incorporate and put more information in the inflected form of the verb, it will certainly lead to a language being able to extract all of the incorporated information in the verb, and thus, due to the principle of economy, it will certainly remove the unnecessary parts from the sentence, and thus incorporating in the verb will certainly lead to a language being it's strengthening the pro drop parameter of the language. So I believe both of the assertions are correct. Now, yes, that's true. Moving on to the next question. So the next question is, in English, my brother John is an example of. What is this an example of? So this is actually an example of an endocentric construction. Now please explain why. My brother John is an example of an endocentric construction. Could you please explain why my brother John, this chunk, it's an endocentric construction? So my brother John is an example of an endocentric construction. Explain why. Why is it so?
The phrase "my brother John" is an example of an endocentric construction because the meaning of the entire phrase is determined by its central element, which is the noun brother. In endocentric constructions, the phrase functions as a unit that refers to the same entity as the head, in this case, brother. The word John provides additional information, but the phrase as a whole is still fundamentally about brother, making it endocentric.
All right, moving on to the next question. The next question is about, it has two assertions. It is about total reduplication and partial reduplication. So, in total reduplication, total reduplication may be described as a
In total reduplication, the entire word or base is repeated to convey emphasis, plurality, or other meanings. For example, in Hindi, gar gar, meaning house house, is used to imply every house or all houses. On the other hand, partial reduplication involves repeating only part of the word, such as the initial syllable or sound. An example of this can be found in Indonesian, where laki laki, meaning man, is derived from the base word laki, with partial reduplication to convey a plural meaning.
So, total reduplication may be described as a specific form of compounding with two identical constituents. Second assertion that partial reduplication results in a construction in which a part of a word is copied and affixed to the base word. So, both of the assertions are true. Moving on to the next one, which of the following is not true regarding scrambling? Distinction can be made between short distance and long distance. Scrambling is an optional rule, is proposed to handle the way constituents permute in fixed word order languages. Factors influencing scrambling may be stylistic in nature. So, not true regarding scrambling. It is incorrect to say that it is proposed to handle the way constituents permute in fixed word order languages, because fixed word order languages cannot scramble. Now, I want you to explain all the other three correct options about, mentioned there, like difference, distinction between short distance and long distance scrambling, optional rule, factors influencing scrambling may be stylistic in nature. Now, give me the explanation for how do these statements relate with scrambling. What do they really mean?
Scrambling is a syntactic phenomenon where the usual word order of a sentence is altered, typically for stylistic or emphasis-related reasons. The three correct statements you mentioned capture key aspects of scrambling. First, the distinction between short distance and long distance scrambling refers to how far the moved element is shifted from its original position. Short distance scrambling occurs within a clause, where elements of a sentence can be rearranged but stay within the same clause. For example, in a language like Japanese, you might rearrange the object and subject within a single sentence. Long-distance scrambling involves movement across multiple clauses. Here, an element from a subordinate clause might be moved to the main clause, creating more complex syntactic structures. This type of scrambling typically involves larger distances and can affect the sentence structure more drastically. Second, scrambling is considered an optional rule in syntax because it doesn't change the grammaticality of a sentence, but alters its structure for particular effects, like emphasis or focus. Unlike obligatory rules, such as subject-verb agreement in English, scrambling doesn't need to be applied in every instance. Rather, it's a choice a speaker might make, depending on what they want to highlight or de-emphasize. Third, stylistic factors can influence scrambling. Scrambling may be employed to achieve a certain stylistic effect, such as focusing on a particular element of a sentence or following discourse conventions. For example, a speaker might move an object to the beginning of a sentence to emphasize it, or they might rearrange elements to fit a more formal or poetic style. These stylistic choices can vary depending on the language, the context, and the speaker's intentions. So, while scrambling doesn't typically occur in fixed word order languages, the three correct options highlight how it can be used flexibly in languages that allow for this type of syntactic movement.
So, could you, give me a simpler explanation for the statement that it is and scrambling is an optional rule? Please give me a simpler explanation for this statement, followed by a complex explanation.
Certainly. Simpler explanation, scrambling is called an optional rule because you don't have to use it in every sentence. It's like having a choice. You can rearrange words to change how things are emphasized or to fit a certain style, but it's not required for the sentence to be correct. Complex explanation. In linguistic terms, an optional rule refers to a grammatical mechanism that allows for variability in sentence structure without affecting the fundamental grammaticality of the sentence. Scrambling as an optional rule means that rearranging sentence elements, such as moving objects or adverbs, is not mandated by the grammar of the language. Instead, it is used selectively to achieve particular effects, such as emphasis, focus, or stylistic variation. While scrambling can alter the surface structure of a sentence, it does not impact its grammatical correctness or its core syntactic functions. This flexibility allows speakers to adapt their language use based on pragmatic needs or personal style, rather than following a rigid set of rules.
All right, now moving on to the next question. Which of the following describes the sentence I like oranges and he bananas? That's an example of a gapping sentence. Now, please explain to me what a small clause is.
A small clause is a grammatical construction where a sentence contains a clause that functions as a single unit but lacks a full verb. It usually includes a subject and a predicate, but the predicate often consists of an adjective or noun rather than a verb. For example, in the sentence, I found the book interesting. The book interesting is a small clause. It describes the book but doesn't have a verb functioning together as a unit.
Now, in the X bar theory, the position of who in the sentence, who does the boy hate, is the spec of C double bar.
Yes, that's correct. In X bar theory, who in the sentence, who does the boy hate, is positioned in the specifier of the C complementizer double bar, often written as spec C. This position is crucial for forming questions in generative grammar, as it places the WH word in a position that marks it as the element being questioned.
All right, moving on to the next one has two assertions. Assertion 1 says that principles and parameters are part of the genetically innate universal grammar. Principles and parameters are part of the genetically innate universal grammar which all humans possess, barring any genetic disorders. True. The second assertion says that.
Yes, that's correct. In generative grammar, the theory of principles and parameters posits that all humans are born with an innate understanding of universal grammar principles. These principles form the basis of all languages, while parameters are settings that adjust to the specific language a person is exposed to. This innate grammar allows humans to easily learn any language they encounter.
And the second is
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
The second assertion says that exposure to language does not trigger the parameters to adopt correct setting. Rather, parameters need to be learned. So this is an incorrect statement. So one is true, but two is false. Moving on to the next one. Which of the following is not true for X bar theory? XP can be the mother of spec and X single bar. Spec and X. So the first is that XP can be the mother of spec and X single bar, and then spec and X single bar can be sisters, and then X single bar, and complement can be sisters, and then adjunct and X single bar can be sisters. So the one that is not correct is that X single bar and the complement can be sisters, because complement, X single bar, yes, the complement is actually the daughter of the head or the X, not the X single bar, right? So, and yes, that's true. Adjunct and X single bar can be sisters. Now, moving on to the next question. The view that meanings of individual words can be used to build up the meanings of larger units, and the meaning of the whole is determined by the meaning of its parts, and the way in which they are assembled is called the no, it is called the principle of compositionality. Now, moving on to the next one, has two assertions. First, that denotational meaning in one sense equates roughly to the literal meaning, and in second sense, a denotation of an expression is a set of entities that it properly applies to or identifies. So that's true. Denotational meaning is the literal meaning, and denotation is an expression of a set of entities, right? So it's like a definition. For a snake to be dangerous, it has to have certain chemicals which are going to harm the immune system of a human body. So all of these terminologies, like for a snake to be dangerous, it has to have certain chemicals which will attack the human immune system, which will not be able to, which will cause a failure of the functioning of the body organs. So these set of entities, yes, so that's the denotational meaning. And the second assertion, then the main application of the term connotation is with reference to the emotional associations that are suggested by or a part of a linguistic unit or item. And in the third usage, it is a set of properties that something has to have to allow the expression to be applied to it. Now, the second assertion really says that the connotation is the emotional associations that linguistic units or items have, and in the third usage, it is a set of properties that something has to have to allow an expression to be applied to it. So, that thing, a dangerous thing. So it is actually a set of property. It's a set of property that something has to have for an expression to be applied to it. So for the term dangerous to be applied to the snake, it has to have a set of properties. Now, as I understand, both of these assertions are true, but I want you to elaborate on what this literally means, and I want you to give me a simpler explanation for each assertion, followed by a complex one.
Sure, let's break it down. First assertion. Denotational meaning is essentially the literal meaning of a word. For example, the denotation of the word snake is a reptile with certain physical characteristics. It's like the dictionary definition. Second assertion. Connotation refers to the emotional or cultural associations tied to a word. For instance, the word dangerous might make you think of fear or caution, which is beyond its literal definition. Third assertion. When we say a term has a specific denotation, we're talking about the set of properties or criteria that must be met for something to fit that term. For dangerous, it means something must have particular properties like venom or a harmful nature for it to be called dangerous. Conclusion. In simpler terms, denotation gives us the exact literal meaning of a word, while connotation involves the extra feelings or ideas associated with it. The third assertion clarifies that these properties are what allow a term to apply to specific cases. So in summary, denotation is about the specific definition, while connotation is about the additional meanings and associations.
Moving on, Sam is a pillar of the community. This is an example of metaphor. Now, I want you to explain what metaphor really is, and then move on to exemplify what metaphor is. Give me different examples that explain what metaphor is, and then move on to the other options in the same question. So there's a question: Sam is a pillar of the community. It has four options: personification, metonymy, metaphor, oxymoron. I want you to elaborate all of them in detail, and then I want you to exemplify all of these things. Like,
Sure. Let's start with the concept of a metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech where a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable in order to suggest a resemblance. Essentially, it's comparing two things directly without using like or as. For example, saying time is the thief suggests that time steals moments, even though time isn't literally a thief. Examples of metaphor: 1. He's a shining star. This means he's outstanding or exceptional, not that he's literally a star. 2. The classroom was a zoo. This means the classroom was very noisy and chaotic, not that it contained actual animals. Now, let's move on to the other options. Personification. This is when non-human objects or abstract concepts are given human characteristics. For example, the wind whispered through the trees. Here, the wind is described as if it can whisper, which it cannot literally do. Metonymy. This is a figure of speech where something is called by a name that is related to or suggested by the original term. For example, the White House issued a statement. Here, the White House stands for the US president or the administration, not the building itself. Oxymoron. This involves combining two contradictory terms to create a paradox. For example, deafening silence. The phrase combines opposing ideas. Deafening suggests loudness, while silence implies no sound. So in the question, Sam is a pillar of the community, is an example of a metaphor because it suggests that Sam is a strong and supportive figure in the community, not literally a structural pillar.
all right, let's move on to the next question. Has two assertions: the thing in the cage is a tiger, the thing in the cage is an animal. One entails two. Explain.
In logical terms, if we say the thing in the cage is a tiger, this statement implies that the thing in the cage is an animal. This is because a tiger is a specific type of animal. So if something is a tiger, it must also be an animal. In other words, the first statement, the thing in the cage is a tiger, includes the second statement, the thing in the cage is an animal, within its meaning. If the thing is a tiger, it's automatically included in the category of animals. Therefore, knowing the thing is a tiger entails that it is also an animal.
Next question. Sham realized that his friend was intelligent is a factative expression. Second, Sham pretended that his friend was intelligent is a counterfactative expression. Please explain what factative and counterfactative statements really mean?
Factative statements are those that imply the truth of the proposition within them. When Sham realizes that his friend is intelligent, it means Sham acknowledges or accepts that fact as true. On the other hand, counterfactual statements involve imagining or presenting a scenario that is not true or contrary to reality. When Sham pretends his friend is intelligent, it means Sham is acting as though his friend is intelligent, but this is not necessarily true or accepted as a fact. Factative expressions acknowledge, while counterfactual expressions involve imagining or pretending scenarios contrary to reality.
Now, like for example, there's a factative expression. So, how many other types of expressions can there be? Um,
Expressions can be categorized in several ways, including factive, counterfactive, and also evaluative and speculative. Factive expressions assume the truth of their content, like Sham realized. Counterfactive expressions deal with imagined or hypothetical situations contrary to reality, like Sham pretended. Evaluative expressions involve judgments or assessments, like Sham thought his friend was brilliant. Speculative expressions consider possibilities or uncertainties, like Sham wondered if his friend could be intelligent. Each type serves different purposes in communication.
is there an exhaustive list of the types of expressions?
There isn't an exhaustive list, as language and expressions can be quite nuanced and context dependent. However, some common types include factive, counterfactive, evaluative, and speculative, as well as hypothetical, interrogative, and imperative expressions. These categories help analyze how statements function in different contexts.
What about the hypothetical and imperative and interrogative expressions?
Hypothetical expressions discuss imagined scenarios or possibilities. For example, if I won the lottery, I would travel the world. These express what could happen under certain conditions. Imperative expressions give commands, requests, or instructions. For instance, please close the door, turn off the lights. They direct someone to perform an action. Interrogative expressions ask questions. Examples include, what time is it? Or are you coming to the party? They seek information or clarification. Each type serves a different function in communication.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Description of the regular correspondence in Indo-European languages is largely accounted for by the Grimm's law. Moving on to the next, one. Comparative reconstruction is usually guided by a thumb rule, which is known as comparative reconstruction is guided by a thumb rule, which is known as the majority wins out. Now, please explain what this statement means in the context of comparative reconstruction, and what can you like exemplify a certain mechanism or certain process that can reflect the validity of this statement.
The statement about comparative reconstruction being guided by the majority bids out rule means that when reconstructing a proto-language, linguists often rely on the most common sound changes or patterns found in the majority of the descendant languages. Essentially, the more frequently observed changes or features in related languages are given more weight in determining the features of the ancestral language. For example, if multiple Indo-European languages show a consistent pattern of sound change, such as the shift from P to F in a majority of languages, linguists will reconstruct the proto-language with this pattern in mind. This helps ensure that the reconstructed features are based on the most likely historical developments, rather than isolated or less common changes.
When it's showtime, errors are, it is you one cannot afford conducting errors. Margin of error is too low when it's game time, isn't it true?
During critical moments like showtime or game time, there is little room for errors. The margin for mistakes is very low, and precision becomes crucial to ensure success or proper performance.
All right, moving on to the next question. The first assertion says that phonological reconstruction is a process in which we apply our knowledge of a linguistic change so as to affect the reverse linguistic history. Now, please explain what this statement means.
Phonological reconstruction involves using what we know about how languages change over time to infer what earlier stages of a language might have sounded like. Essentially, we reverse engineer the history of a language's sounds to reconstruct its earlier forms. This helps us understand the evolution of phonemes and their patterns in ancient languages based on their modern descendants and historical data.
So what does the statement, the chunk of words reverse linguistic history, in this statement really means, like, reverse linguistic history? I can understand that reverse means going back to the reconstruction of the proto language. Is that what this means? Please be precise. Don't be too elaborate.
Yes, reverse linguistic history means using knowledge of sound changes to reconstruct earlier forms of a language, essentially going back to a proto-language.
And the second assertion says that comparative reconstruction frequently needs to draw on the insights provided by the method of internal reconstruction. So, comparative reconstruction needs to draw on the insights provided by the method of internal reconstruction. Meaning, so comparative reconstruction needs to draw on the insights provided by the method of internal reconstruction, right? So comparative reconstruction needs to look at the output that has been presented by internal reconstruction in order to be able to be fully operational in its in its process of reconstruction. So, can you explain an instance of how what can elaborate the statement, the validity of this statement that comparative reconstruction needs to look on the output provided by the internal reconstruction?
Comparative reconstruction often uses insights from internal reconstruction to fine-tune its findings. For instance, if you're reconstructing Proto-Indo-European sounds, comparative reconstruction looks at similar sound changes across related languages. Internal reconstruction, on the other hand, analyzes irregularities within a single language to infer past sound changes. For example, if a language shows a pattern where a sound shift occurs in some words but not others, internal reconstruction can help identify which sounds were present in earlier stages of the language. Comparative reconstruction can then use this information to better reconstruct the proto-language by aligning these insights with patterns observed in related languages.
Can you please go ahead and explain the same thing to me in simpler terms?
What an ancient language sounded like by comparing related languages. Internal reconstruction looks at a language and its changes over time. For example, if a language has some old words with unusual sounds, internal reconstruction helps figure out how those sounds changed. Then comparative reconstruction uses this information to better understand how those sounds might have been in the common ancestor of related languages. So they work together to provide a clearer picture of the ancient language.
Your voice actually got cut off, so I could not hear most of the explanation that you gave. So could you please again repeat the simpler explanation regarding that?
Of course, comparative reconstruction uses information from related languages to figure out what an ancient language was like. Internal reconstruction looks at changes within a single language over time. Internal reconstruction helps by showing how sounds in that language have changed. Comparative reconstruction then uses this information to better understand the sounds in the common ancestor of related languages. So, internal reconstruction provides details that help comparative reconstruction be more accurate.
Okay, so as far as I can understand, internal reconstruction does its thing on a particular language, and then comparative reconstruction takes that thing from the internal reconstruction and compares different internal reconstructions from different languages or done in different languages, and then comparative reconstruction by taking the information from that internal reconstruction compares every data and then gives out its output. Internal reconstruction helps comparative reconstruction to function more effectively.
Yes, that's right. Internal reconstruction examines changes within a single language to understand its history. Comparative reconstruction then uses these insights, along with data from related languages, to reconstruct features of a common ancestor language. So, internal reconstruction provides useful details that make comparative reconstruction more effective in piecing together the history of related languages.